Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube.
Hey guys, and welcome back to the YouTube channel. So today we've got a leg day on the cards. I did film this session last week, but unfortunately, because I'm such a great cameraman, I forgot to record the audio and that all went to waste. So we actually got a really good posing session in afterwards with AJ as well. So that all went to waste, but hopefully we can get another one in a few weeks. But yeah, leg day on the cards today. Cybex Hack Mark 1. It was my first run on it last week, so I got 3.5 plates for 7. So I'm probably going to take 3.5 again, hopefully get that towards 8, 9, 10 area. You've got the same, so you've got Cybex up today?
I have indeed, yeah. Got 7 plates unbanded for a set of 10 with RAR.
Yeah. So week 1 of your method, RAR?
Yeah, definitely, 100%.
Yeah, so
no, I just train with RAR.
Oh, okay. No failures training.
I'm so strong that I have to manage my fatigue really well. 5
RAR today for Lawrence, just to manage fatigue really well, start the method cycle. That's why he'll be doing less than me on the Cybex hack, not because he's awful at hacks for it.
No, not the start of the meso cycle, just the start of the cycle, full stop.
Start the cycle, yeah.
Start of the cycle.
Don't say that, mate.
Yeah, sorry.
What if Lee Kemp hears that? What if Lee Kemp and Andy Chappelle hear that? You're going to get banned from the UK, the FBA and the BMBF.
True.
So be careful.
I'll just compete in the qualifier and then pull out of the finals.
Compete in the qualifier, dominate everyone.
I've dieted for too long.
No testing on the qualifiers. Win all the qualifiers. Nah, I don't want to compete at finals.
You'll just see all the stage shots. I've got Gyno and I'm just fucking peeled, absolutely jacked.
You got the Gyno from puberty though, didn't you?
Yeah.
Not because you've hammered tests for years.
No.
Anyway,
definitely not.
Lawrence is natural. We are joking. I know he looks a little bit unnatural, but he's very natural. He doesn't even take his supplements, so can't call him unnatural, can we?
Yeah.
So,
but if I'd oh wait, hang on. I'm taking some of your ashwagandha. Is that?
Oh mate. So we'll cut that out.
Okay.
So yeah, let's get into the video. So, first movement of the session is a seated leg curl. So the reason why I start with a hamstring curl is basically to passively load the knee joint before going into any heavy squatting or heavy leg pressing movements. Just makes it a little bit safer for me to really load those heavy compounds. Also, on a leg curl or any leg isolation movement, it's going to be harder in the shortened range, so the strength profile of leg isolation movements are always harder in the shortened range. So therefore, doing it fresh, you can get a lot more out of that range. Another key thing to note is that a seated leg curl allows you to get into the hamstrings fully lengthened range because you're in hip flexion and in full knee extension. A prone leg curl will allow you to get into the fully shortened range because you're in hip extension and full knee flexion. So by doing both functions of lengthening or shortening the hamstring, we can therefore fully shorten or fully lengthen the hamstring. So we'll do a couple of warm-up sets on here, and then we'll go to a working set of 8 to 12 and a back off of 12 to 15. So back off set of 12 to 15 now. I micro-load this set just because the gaps in between each load increment on this machine are 5 kilograms, and especially being in a deficit, going up and load 5 kilograms on a hamstring curl. As a percentage of the load that I'm going up, that's quite a big percentage, so I like to micro-load it with a 2.5. That just makes each progression a little bit smaller, so the change in difficulty between each load increment is slightly less. I also, on this machine, use a seat belt. So this seat belt really locks my hips in place, stops me using any lower back or any momentum out of the lengthened range. That really allows me to make sure that all the tension is going to my hamstrings, not my lower back and erectors. So that's the hamstring curl done. We'll go on to the prime leg extension now. So again, same rationale for doing the leg extension before our compounds. Really just getting some blood into the quads, really rinsing that shortened range before going to a compound, which is going to be a little bit harder in the lengthened range. So yeah, same again here, we'll do a set of 8 to 12 and a set of 12 to 15. So with the prime leg extension, you can change the resistance profile with this cam here. So pin 3 is loading it in the lengthened range or the stretch. Pin 2 is loading it in the shortened range or the contraction. And pin 1 is loading it through the mid-range. So a lot of people like to load it on pin 4 or pin 2, so the shortened range settings, towards the start of the session, because they believe they're getting more out of the shortened range by doing that. However, you've got to remember that your shortened range is going to be the limiting factor on a leg extension, even if you're loading it evenly, because that's where you're weak from a strength profile perspective. In my opinion, loading it on pin 1 or pin 5 is always going to be better, even if you're doing it at the start of the session, because all you're doing by loading it on pin 2 or pin 4 is getting less out of the lengthened range, because the shortened range is a limiting factor anyway on pin 1 or pin 5. So personally, I'll load it on pin 1 or pin 5, and therefore you get more at the lengthened range as well, while still failing in that shortened range. If I was doing it towards the end of the session, maybe after my compound, I'd load it on pin 3, because at that point in the session I'll be very fatigued, therefore I won't be able to create as much power in the shortened range. So pin 3 is probably going to match the strength profile and resistance profiles most accurately. So, as well as having a seat belt on the leg extension, I also strap in with these lifting straps. So what this does, basically allows me to pull into the seat as hard as possible, and therefore create as much stability as possible within the set. That means I can create more force through my quads, therefore lift a heavier load while keeping the same form, which allows me to then create more mechanical tension and potentially grow more. So don't be scared of what people say about strapping into your leg extensions. It really helps the movement and allows you to drive all the tension through your quads. So next up, we've got the reverse banded Cybex hack squat. So the reason why we reverse band it is because on any squatting movement, you're going to be weak at the bottom. Therefore, the band kicks in at the bottom to try and help you out the hole, matching the strength and resistance profiles a bit more and allowing you to fail more accurately. A lot of people think that reverse banding movement makes the movement easier, but in actual fact, it makes the movement harder because you can take it closer to true failure. If you're not reverse banding it, and you're failing at the bottom of the movement, your shortened range still hasn't reached failure. But if you reverse band it and match the profiles really well, you can fail a lot more accurately across the full contractile range. You've also got to remember that we've all got different anatomies. So the length of your femur is going to make a big difference as to how hard it is at the bottom of the movement. The reason for this is, if you've got long femurs, the moment arm created between your knee and your hip at the very bottom is bigger, and therefore you require more torque to move the load. So if you've got smaller femurs, it's not going to be quite as hard for you at the bottom. It's still going to be harder, but not quite as hard for you at the bottom as if you've got longer femurs. So really, you just got to do what works best for you. Try out different setups, different band tensions, and see what you can fail the most effectively with. The way you can test how accurately you're reaching failure is by assessing the speed of your last rep. So if your last rep is really slow across the full contractile range, from the lengthened range all the way to the shortened range, then you've probably nailed the setup and matched the profiles really well. The toe shoots are coming out for the hack. I find that I can get a lot more stability through the floor by going barefoot, so rather than get my feet out, I just wear these Vibrams. It also helps a lot with the connection to my quads as well, because I can really focus on driving through my big toe and my heel. So we've just got one set on here, one set of 8 to 12. The reason for that is it's a very fatiguing movement. I feel like I can get a lot out of just one set. I can fail really accurately on it and take it all the way there. So there's not really any need to do a back off set on this, especially with where my recovery capabilities are at now. I think one set is more than enough on here. But when training with that kind of volume, you've got to take it all the way there. You've got to be extremely accurate, extremely intense, and have perfect execution. Yeah, so you can see the intensity on that set. After a set like that, I don't need another set to get anything more out of the movement. So next up, we've got the Sarbex pivot leg press, or the Sarbex squat press, whatever you want to call it. Basically for this movement, all I'm focusing on is getting as much knee flexion as possible, because the more amount of knee flexion we can create, the more amount of quad stimulus we'll get from the movement. So to get the most amount of knee flexion possible, you've got to use a foot stance, which allows you to get as deep as possible on the leg press. For me, that foot stance is slightly wider than usual, toes pointing slightly out, and a slight bit of abduction at the hip. So on paper, it might not be quad biased, because usually people say a closer stance and lower feet positioning. However, for me, that's the stance which allows me to get the most knee flexion, so therefore I'm getting the most quad stimulus from it. Even if I'm getting more adductor and glute, I don't mind, because I'm still getting more knee flexion. So that's all that really matters when trying to bias your quads. You'll also see on this movement that I have a slight bit of lumbar rounding at the bottom of each rep. However, for me, this feels safe, so I'm not too worried about it. It allows me to get deeper, and therefore I can get more knee flexion. Also, because of the way the load moves around the pivot point on this machine, it gets slightly harder towards the top of the movement, and therefore the amount of torque or force you need to create at the bottom of the movement is less. Therefore, there's slightly less challenge in the length and range, meaning I don't mind a little bit of lumbar rounding, because it still feels pretty safe with that lower amount of load at the bottom. So we'll do 2 sets here, an 8 to 12, a 12 to 15, and then we'll head on to the glute drive. So on the glute drive, all I'm trying to think about throughout the movement is keeping my knee angle at 90 degrees. So all I'm doing is dropping my hips and lifting my hips. That allows me to keep all the tension on the glutes, rather than my knee angle changing, pulling tension away to the quads basically. So just think about dropping your hips, don't drop too far into the hole, otherwise your knee angle will change and straighten. And don't focus on overextending at the top, otherwise you'll start running into lower back issues. So the penultimate movement of the session is the live fitness adductor. I'll just do one set on here, a rest pause set with the stack, just because the stack is very, very light, and if you start to add weight to it, it gets really sticky. So I prefer to just stay on the stack and just try and run up the amount of reps I can get with a rest pause set. So the reason why we do a rest pause set is basically a very time efficient way of accumulating more effective reps. So effective reps are basically the ones that are very close to failure. These reps are the most stimulatory for hypertrophy. Therefore, if you can accumulate more effective reps in a shorter period of time, it's a very time efficient way to do your isolations. So final movement of the day is a standing calf raise. I do 2 sets on here. It's a very light calf raise machine. So I do one with the stack plus 20, and then my back off is just with the stack. You can tell if the calf machine is light if I can stop the machine, because I have the worst calves in bodybuilding. So 2 sets here. We'll do a 2 count in the short and a 2 count in the lengthen. That's just to make sure that we're removing all stretch reflex in the stretch, and also getting a really good contraction in the shorten range. This basically just means that all the tension again is going through the calves. So that is the leg day done. A good session on the whole. I was a bit low on energy due to training after one meal, but we get on with it, no excuses. I still had quite a decent amount of progressions. A few regressions in there, but that's completely normal when you're losing weight at quite a quick rate in the diet. But on the whole, happy with that session. I hope you guys take some value from the stuff I spoke about as well. And yeah, I'll catch you on the next one.